what leakages are, why they're caused, and how to treat and prevent them. We do have a little time set aside at the end for questions and answers, but we'd really love to hear from you throughout. We want to make this as interactive as possible. So we really encourage you to share your questions or comments with us. There's a couple of great ways you can do that. Next slide, please. So Zoom has, at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see a chat function as well as a raise hand function. You can use either of those to get our attention. If you have a question, please feel free to send it through the chat to us and we'll pause and answer it. Same if something is unclear or you'd like a clarification, please feel free to ask us to pause in the chat or just raise your hand. So if you click on that little raise hand button, it'll essentially just let us know that you have something to say and we can pause and chat. So next slide, please. So who is Better Health? Who are we and why are we here? We are a new type of medical provider. And what that means is we take a really holistic view of your healthcare journey. So we start at the beginning of your journey, and we really like to provide a lot of educational resources like this webinar series in order to ensure that you really have the information that you need in order to make the best decisions for yourself. We also have a peer coaching program. So you can call in at any time and talk to one of our vetted peer coaches, and they can answer your questions or help you kind of get through any specific problems that you might be facing. We also have a fantastic team of product experts. So if you're having product specific questions or you're trying to find the right products for you, they can help you out with that. And we're also a medical supplier. So once you've worked with our experts, you've had your questions answered, you've found the right products for you, we can also help you navigate the paperwork and insurance and get you those supplies. We'll ship those supplies directly to your door. So with that, I'll hand it over to Siobhan and we'll dive right in.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here today. I'm Siobhan, and I'm so excited. I am having a little technical issue with my video sharing, so if my colleagues want to poke me in the chat, let me know what's going on there. I am happy to do that. Oh, I can start the video. No, I can't. Okay, so hopefully we can figure that part out. But here's a picture of me on the screen. My name is Siobhan. I am an ostomate. I have an ileostomy. I got my ileostomy in 2015, so I've had it just over 6 years now. Later on, I had what's known as the Barbie butt surgery, where I still had disease that was remaining in the colon that they had left in my body. So they did have to remove the colon and sew everything up and shut. And so this is me now. I'm healthy, I'm happy. It's 6 years later, and I'm sort of living the life that I want. That I wouldn't have prior to my ileostomy. I had ulcerative colitis, and it was a really, really difficult and traumatic time for me. And a lot of us I know have experienced this trauma with the medical invasive procedures, pain from surgeries, pain trying to recover from surgery. So, you know, we're all here together to learn from each other, and I'm excited to hear a little bit more about you guys later on when we have a chance to chat. But, you know, I wanted to let you know you're hearing things directly from the horse's mouth. And the reason I'm here today is because, you know, I had such a difficult time after my own ostomy that I wanted to ensure that people have the opportunity to avoid that path and, you know, I want to make sure that everybody has the knowledge that I didn't have when I was starting out. Oh, and yes, those are guinea pigs down there at the bottom. Those are some pets, family pets that we spend a lot of time with these days, and they have funny antics and silly things going on. So, oh, and they are poop machines, just like me. All right, so let's dive right in. Well, let's talk about leaks and what they are and what it means and why they're bad. So, why you want to avoid leaks? I think this is an obvious question and probably has an obvious answer, but the number one reason you want to avoid leaks is that products are expensive. I know it breaks my heart to hear about people who are out there in the world, and not only is their insurance not covering their products for them, they're not getting the right products. And so the products don't fit, they don't work well with their skin chemistry for whatever reason. They're spending money going to different companies and retailers trying to get products that work, and ultimately they don't. And then a lot of you, I imagine, have a ton of supplies on hand that don't work for you and you don't know what to do with them. And by the way, you can donate them, but we don't want to waste money on products. Extra changes interrupt our life. There's a million better things that we could all be doing than dealing with ostomy leaks from our barriers. And then finally, and this is the most important reason, is it's bad for our skin. It's not healthy for us to have output that's acidic and that sits on our skin, and it causes degradation of the skin, and it causes pain, and then you try to put on a new barrier, and the barrier doesn't work as well, and you get more skin degradations, more skin issues, and it's a vicious cycle. So avoiding leaks is really, really important for our overall ostomy health, our overall skin health. And so, there's some great reasons why you're all here today. So, before I go too much farther, let's talk about leaks. Let's get on the same page about what's normal and what's not normal with a leak. So a leak is whenever output is able to get under the barrier and onto the skin. And like I said, you really want to avoid getting that output on the skin. It's not a perfect system when we apply our barriers. Sometimes our stomas are really active when we're applying barriers, and we might get a little bit of output, on the stoma cream, or on the paste or the barrier. That's okay. It's like I said, it's not a perfect system. Sometimes that can happen, and it's not a big problem. Usually the barrier will just absorb the output, and it's and your skin continues to be okay. You want to keep an eye on it though. So here's what is a problem. You suddenly find yourself with a barrier that is leaking output, and you need to change now. So signals of barrier leaks, there's pain or itching because the output is on the skin. You actually see output leaking from the barrier, or the barrier is peeling off. It's just not sticking. So leaks are caused by a lot of reasons, and we'll get into all of them in more detail, but as an overview, one reason you might have leaks is poor adhesion between the barrier and the skin. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Like I said, I'll get into a little bit more detail. There's also poor barrier fit around the stoma. If the barrier goes around the stoma, and the space between the barrier opening and the stoma itself is too large, output can get into that area and then under the barrier, and then, like I said, cause problems. Too much moisture. Barriers are meant to, absorb a certain amount of moisture, and sometimes they, there's too much and they can't absorb anymore, and they start to lose adhesion. And then body shape and stoma shape. Oh, here I am. Hi, everybody. My camera view is on, so hopefully you can see me now while I take a drink here. We all have different body shapes. We all have different stoma shapes, and we don't have a lot of control over that. Sometimes stomas land in creases or folds, even though before surgery, you might have planned for it to be in a slightly different area. So, we can adapt to those. The good news is that there is a lot of, there's a lot of things you can try to help with leaks. The very first thing, and this is my pro tip for you all, is that you want to keep an emergency change kit with you at all times when you're first starting out. And that way, if you are having a lot of leaks and you're not sure of your system and you're learning how to apply your ostomy supplies in a way that works best for you, you have control over your leak, and you can change your leak right when you need to. I actually have an example. This is my own ostomy kit, emergency kit. I just throw it into my purse or my backpack for the day if I'm out hiking. And I just keep bare basics. I keep some trash bags. Doggy bags are a good option. I keep some paste in here. I keep my own supplies, some wipes, which are very handy, and some tissues if I need to lay down and clean up around the area. And then of course my ostomy system, which is a 2-piece system right here. So I have two changes in my emergency kit, and I always have that with me if in case of blowouts or leaks. So let's talk more about understanding how ostomy products work together to prevent leaks. So there's a number of products out there. I just mentioned paste, but let's start with the barrier sprays and wipes. These all kind of work in combination with each other to help create the best barrier. So the barrier sprays barrier sprays have two great purposes. One is to create a layer on the skin that protects it from output, and the second is to create a surface to which the barrier itself can adhere a little better. Powders are used for moisture control. So powders, usually if you're having a lot of, if you might have leaky skin that's a little denuded, a little broken up because you've had a little bit of output, applying stoma powders like the one on the screen or the ones that I'm holding up from a couple of different product manufacturers are all good options to kind of sprinkle. You treat it like a baby. You sprinkle a little powder around the stoma area and it will start to absorb moisture. Paste and barrier rings. Now these are sort of our, I need a good example to think of a good example, but they're kind of our warriors because they back up the barriers and the work that the barriers do. Barrier rings like this one and stoma paste, like these two guys, are like in a leaky bathroom, you often need to reapply caulk to keep the water from getting in between, like say, your tiles and your bathtub. If that's the case, you apply basically this paste, this caulking paste, or they're available in strips. And the paste will form a flexible seal, just like a barrier ring would. And you can use some of these products in combination, all of them, none of them. It depends on what your individual needs are in terms of how much security you need when putting on your barrier. And then of course, your ostomy barriers, which are sort of the kingpin of the whole process. But they're supported by all these other products to protect the skin and prevent leaks. All right, let's talk about how to prevent leaks, just on a day-to-day basis when you're applying your barriers. The number one thing for preventing leaks is understanding your barrier shape. And there are a couple of different barrier shapes that are meant for different body shapes and stoma types. If you have a normal stoma, which if you're very lucky, your stoma protrudes out about 1 inch, it's sitting on a relatively flat area of skin, you can use a flat barrier. I got very lucky, my stoma protrudes nicely, so I can usually get away with a flat barrier. So the difference between a flat barrier and say other types of barriers is something called convexity. So a convex barrier, so a flat barrier is very thin, it's like a sheet of paper. A convex barrier has a little bit of a rise to it, almost like a little hill. And this little hill is the part that goes against the stomach. And if you have a retracted stoma, it will help allow the stoma, oops, this way. If it's a little stoma, if it puts a little pressure on the skin around the stoma and helps the stoma push out a little bit more, allowing output from the stoma to not sit close to the skin, especially if you have output or a short stoma. You can see how output can pull around and get under the barrier and into the skin. So the convex barrier helps protect against that. And then finally, maybe you're dealing with a couple of different issues. Maybe you're dealing with a hernia, which is a bulge in the muscles, or which is when the organs can kind of push through the muscle walls. And you're dealing with a retracted stoma as well. So In that case, there are a couple of products that you might have to experiment with in terms of finding what works best for you. Sometimes you use a convex barrier. Sometimes you might use a flat barrier because it's really, really flexible. It sort of takes an experimentation. All right, when you're applying the barrier, you want to start with a clean skin. You figured out you need a flat barrier. You figured out you need a convex barrier. Start with clean skin, and really all you need to do is water and.
Siobhan, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think we're having a little bit of static with your mic. Could you speak up, please?
You bet. 1 second. Just let me know if you're
It's really hard to understand you.
Maybe try turning off the Bluetooth and just using the computer audio.
Yep.
1 second. I apologize.
Sorry, everybody. Well, it'll just be a second.
Just adjusting for echo. All right. So everyone can hear me back now? Oh, I'm muted.
Nope, you're good.
I'm good. Okay. Sorry. 2 different screens. Confusing myself. All right. Again, my apologies, everyone. It's exciting to be here. Maybe the technology was overexcited too. All right. Start with clean skin. Avoid lotions, body washes, baby wipes, oils. All of those things can leave a residue on the skin that will interfere with adhesion. So you want to apply the products in a particular order. You want to start with a skin barrier spray or wipe. You want to crust with the powder, optional. And this is an optional step if you are having some issues with skin, like I said, being irritated, or you might see little pustules or pimples, and so the powder can help with that. Then you apply the paste or barrier rings, which I mentioned are like the flexible caulk. And then the ostomy barrier, which is, like I said, you want to find the right one. There's some caveats to how you want to apply it. You want to give products a chance to set. They're like glues, so they need a chance to sort of warm up and work their magic. So a couple of things you can do. You can use a blow dryer for 20 to 30 seconds on your skin prior to starting your whole application process. This will allow your skin to get really nice and dry and be ready to receive the products. You also post putting on your barrier in your pouch. You could sit with a heating pad over your barrier and pouch or over your clothes for 10 to 15 minutes. This is my favorite trick that I use a lot because this trick, lets me sit on my phone, but it also seems to give me a really good result in terms of barriers, adhesion. After you apply your barrier, you want to avoid rigorous activity for an hour. Sometimes I go for an hour, like hours, or even I wait till the next day before I sort of put my barrier to the test if I'm going for a run or a spin class or something, or grocery shopping or chasing my kid, whatever it takes. But I do find that the sooner I do major activity after applying the barrier, the sooner the barrier will break back down. And then I also avoid changing right before sleeping because I've noticed that a lot of times our bodies are sort of catching up with our digestion from the day, and that digestion is putting out gas and it's putting out output, and it tends to fill up the bag, putting pressure on the seal. And since it's a new seal, it will break down sooner. How long should barriers last? Per the manufacturer recommendations, usually 2 to 4 days. That's great if you're getting longer wear, but you shouldn't be having a daily change because it's been really stressful on your skin, and it can signal a problem. So if that's the case, you want to check in with your medical provider or your wound care nurse to see if they have any suggestions for your barrier, or if your skin is starting to get really raw and painful. Or, and I'll talk about this again a little later, but you can schedule some time with an ostomy coach here at Better Health, and I'll explain how that works in a few. All right, let's get into some common problems. There are lots of common problems. As I mentioned earlier, a little bit of output under the barrier can be normal, especially because our stomas are active during changes and it's hard to get a perfectly clean and quiet stoma when you do a change. One thing you can do is change your barrier first thing in the morning. That tends to be when digestive systems are the most quiet, the most quiescent, and they'll be less likely to do output, put output on you that you have to clean up afterwards. You can also, if your barrier is collecting a lot of output right around the stoma, is something called pancaking, you could try to increase hydration, and that will allow that output to drop down into the bag, because you don't want the output building up around the stoma. You can also, if you're having a lot of gas and the gas is filling up your pouch and pulling it away from your body, I would recommend reducing gas-causing foods and drinks like sodas and other and alcohol that is carbonated, onions, Brussels sprouts, red meats, broccoli, cauliflower. All of those are gas-inducing foods. And this is a specific tip for colostomates and ileostomates. If you have a urostomy and you're not experiencing this, that's normal. Urostomies are just about the urine and not about passing stool. You can re-measure your stoma to make sure that your stoma barrier is sitting, your stoma and your barrier are very close together. You want to make sure the stoma opening is less than 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeters of skin. That way the barrier can swell a little bit and cover that space without choking the stoma, because you don't want to choke the stoma and cut off blood supply. That will cause another set of problems. You want to ensure dips, increases, and dimples are filled in. This is where those paste and the ostomy ring barriers that I mentioned are key players, because they make an even flat surface for the barrier to adhere to, especially if you have like a dimple around your stoma from surgery or whatever. And then one piece versus two piece. I bring this up because one pieces are two our ostomy systems that adhere together, like kind of like Tupperware. You know, if you can hear that, there's a click. And then one piece systems have the barrier and the ostomy bag connected together. You can choose, a common problem with one pieces is that it's hard to see where the stoma is and if it's centered within the barrier opening. So when you're putting your barrier, you cut your hole in your barrier and you're putting it around the stoma, you may be putting it to the left or the right and not dead centered around the stoma. And if that's happening, that extra space between the barrier opening and the stoma will allow output to sit on the, will allow output to get out and sit on the skin. Another thing that I've noticed with one pieces, and I was experimenting on myself last week, is that the one pieces tend to be really, really flexible. And I thought, oh, this is great. I'm going to try the one piece. I'm going to live my own recommendations and see how it works. And while the one piece was nice because it is just one piece of material, the problem I started having was it was too flexible for me. So it was creasing too much and allowing output to get in under the barrier. So with that said, I actually went back to my more structured one piece, and it doesn't fold as much as the two piece, and it's keeping that that structure helps keep my output moving into the bag and not allowing the bending to interfere with the seals. Blowouts. We've all had a blowout. If you haven't had a blowout, you're the luckiest ostomate alive. I've had them at all times, swimming in airports, at night, and it's no fun. And I hope that nobody has a blowout from now on, but the case may is going to be that we're all going to have blowouts. So usually they're caused by gas or stool overfilling the pouch and pulling the seal away from the skin, or daily activity or strenuous activities. They're just, the barriers can hold up, but we do put them to the test by living our lives. So things you can try, you can always empty your pouch before bed, reduce those gassy foods and drinks. This is a key one. Eat your last meal earlier in the day, because especially for colostomates and ileostomates, again, not so much for urostomies, our digestive process is a little faster than it is with normal unaltered anatomy, in meaning that we might digest our food as quickly as 4 to 6 hours if you have an ileostomy, and a little longer than that for colostomies, because the colon has a chance to continue digestion a little bit longer. So if that's the case, your digestion will finish up overnight. And so if you imagine if you eat a meal at 8 p.m., and then it's, your body is going to process that and output it, starting around midnight or 2 a.m. And so that's when you start to get problems when the pouch fills up. So, finish that meal earlier in the day and keep your digestive system active, and so it will do its thing faster. Check your barrier often. You can often see, if there's a major output, major leak has started, and even if you don't feel it yet. And then the longer you wear your barrier, the more chance it weakens and you have a blowout. So you want to make sure you're changing your barrier regularly. All right, this is one of my favorites: incisions, belly buttons, and bulges. I like to problem solve here because I myself have multiple scars going vertically and horizontally, and you probably do too. And also with belly buttons, sometimes we wake up from surgery and we don't have a belly button, or our belly button is a weird shape. So, here's a couple of things that you can try for if you have those barriers, if you have those problems cropping up for you. Experiment with different barriers. Like I said, in this case, a more flexible barrier might actually be great for you. If you have bulge, or your stomach is sitting in a crease and the pouch needs to kind of fold over like this. You can see on my camera. Swap in a convex barrier, try it out, and see if that gives you the support that you need around your stoma, especially if it's retracting. You can do a couple of other things with your barrier. You can trim your barrier. For instance, mine sits really close to my belly button, and for a while I was trimming kind of about a 1/4 inch of the barrier off right around here. So enough to kind of miss the belly button, but still provide a good seal for me. Or I figured this trick out too: just rotate your barrier. Yeah, you would think you would put it on like this, but I've been putting it on like this, and just by rotating it, I miss my belly button and I get a great seal. So those are my tricks for that. Barrier edges, excess moisture. So this is the thing that I wish I had known as a new ostomate, is that barriers are like baby diapers. They're meant to absorb a certain amount of moisture, but at a certain point, they have a limit, and that moisture's got to figure out somewhere to go. So it might go under the barrier, into the bag, or whatever. But the water, this moisture can come from too much sweat or the environment. If you live in a humid environment, you might have the barrier become oversaturated with fluid from output. But also if you're swimming or bathing, like if you're having a warm bath, or if you're in a hot tub, your barrier, especially if you have a filter on your barrier, I've noticed that with bags that I use that have filters on them, I will certainly experience a quicker failure from the barrier, because, and this is, I haven't tested this out scientifically, but I suspect that water is able to get in through the filter a little bit and add to the excess moisture that might come from if you're sweating or something that your body's producing because of warm water. If you are having moisture problems, I ended up with a yeast infection. One way to get around that, or to work with that, is to use a crusting method. So if your skin is kind of you know your skin's going to get moist for whatever reason. You want to start with a thin layer of barrier spray around the skin on a clean layer, on a clean area of skin, and then you want to dust it with ostomy powder. Now for this, you do need the barrier spray, because if you use a wipe and you try to do this, you're just going to wipe off the powder when you're trying to apply an extra layer of barrier spray. And this will create kind of a crust, a protective crust over the area of skin that's over the area of skin. I apologize, all the products just fell over. Over the skin that needs that extra protection. Sometimes, you know, the old joke, it's not you, it's me. In that case, it can be the you is you as the ostomate, and the me is the pouch, the products themselves. Sometimes, for whatever reason, quality assurance doesn't happen with our pouches, with our products, and we get a poor batch that's not going to adhere well. We might get products that weren't stored well when they were shipped, or, you know, maybe they were shipped to you, but they sat in a hot Amazon truck or UPS truck or whatever. Sometimes we do have an issue with body hair. If that's the case, you can feel free to shave that body hair just very gently to help your products, you know, adhere to your body. There's also try different barriers. There's a big difference between different types of barrier materials. Some of them are more like Band-Aids. I thought I had one up here. Yeah, I do. So on this Hollister product, this, I'm gonna hold this up real close to the camera. This is like a Band-Aid material. It's called an acrylic barrier, and it uses acrylic tape to adhere to the skin. Here on this Coloplast barrier, this is a hydrocolloid barrier, which is more of a gel base, and they adhere to the skin. You might have better luck using one over the other in terms of what sort of adhesive is going to work best with your particular body chemistry. All right, so I'm trying to make up a little bit of time and so we can have our conversation, but, you know, let's do some conclusions and key takeaways. We're almost to the end. So, you know, remember to check your barrier often. The sooner you notice a leak, the more prepared you are to change it. You know, be prepared, have that emergency kit with you, you know, like I have mine. Ensure that you have the right barrier and the right fit. Don't be afraid to experiment and try different products. I've noticed that if I just call my my supplier and I say, hey, can I try this barrier and this barrier and this barrier, they're happy to do so. They're happy to like add those to my order. So, you know, just get a box. And then if you figure out that it doesn't work for you, you know, you may have only paid the copay to experiment, and hopefully, you know, you're not spending hundreds of dollars to try different products from other places. You know, and be aware of environmental factors that affect barriers. So, for instance, you want to store your supplies in a dry, cool place in your own home. You have control over that. So, you know, you can definitely find a closet or under the bed or someplace where the supplies aren't going to be exposed to heat and moisture. And then, you know, watch your diet and your meal times. Those can really have a big effect on your barrier and how well it works for you. You know, like I mentioned, your digestion is happening, you know, at night if you're eating a late dinner. So you might be at more risk for blowouts and that sort of thing. All right, so here's the exciting news. A little while ago, I mentioned having a signing up for a coaching session with Better Health. So we have a brand new peer coaching program that we just launched this week. I'm Siobhan, is one of the peer coaches. We have 3 so far, and we're hoping more will join soon. What it is a one-on-one session with a vetted peer ostomate. So meaning you're talking to somebody who also has an ostomy, who will also walk the same road in terms of problems, figuring out, any issue, blowouts, skin issues, adapting to life as an ostomate in terms of your social life, your sexual life, your emotional and physical health, all of those things that can be affected by our ostomies. It's 30 minutes. You have a chance to, talk about, like I said, problems, find solutions, and get some recommendations, just like we've been doing in this webinar. I want to share information with you who are here today, and thank you for being here, so that you can avoid the problems that some of us have already worked through, and we don't want other people to experience. So at the end of this webinar today, we're going to chat a little bit, but you'll get a copy of this slide presentation with a link. This is an actual link that you can use to go to Better Health's landing page, where you can sign up for a session. So it involves giving some personal information about yourself and filling out a form, and we have to collect this information so that we know, we know about you, and we know about your problems. And then when you come into the session, we're ready to go. We don't have to spend time, trying to figure out exactly what ostomy you might have, that sort of thing. So that way we can use our time the most effectively and to your best benefit if you do want to sign up for a coaching session. All right, so you've probably sick of hearing me speak. I've been going for 34 minutes. What we're going to do is open it up to chatting. You can post questions in the chat, raise your hand, and ask a question. Tell us what ostomy you have and where you're from, and just ask a quick question, and we'll see if we can support you. If we can't, I can get back to you after the ostomy webinar is over and let you know what your question, you find out what your answers are.
You can please feel free to also just unmute yourself if you have any questions or anything that you'd like to share.
All right. I know that one of the common questions that we get is around convex barriers and how they really work. And what's cool about convex barriers is that there are different levels of a convexity. So sometimes if you just need a little help, you can get a very shallow convex barrier. But if you need a lot of help, there are some very deep convex barriers out there that can really push that stoma forward and move the output away from the skin and really help you with any sort of problems you might have. Oh, Anita, what was your question?
Nothing, thank you.
Oh, okay. Smells. I got a question in the chat. How do you deal with smells? So the good news is that odor ostomy, ostomy bags these days are really great at managing smells in terms of keeping it contained. My family doesn't pull any punches with me and will tell me if something is smelling or stinky. They're very open conversations, and they've never commented on any sort of smell that I have from the ostomy bag. However, I know that some people feel very sensitive about that, and I totally can understand because nobody wants to smell bad. So there are a couple of ways that you can deal with smells. There are some products that you can add to your pouch. I don't have it on my desk at the moment. It's a lubricating deodorant. All the different manufacturers make them, so you can try different types. And you can add a couple of drops to your pouch. Not only will it kind of help mitigate the smell, any odors you might experience, but you also will experience, but you also will experience an easier time emptying your pouch because the deodorant will lubricate output and help it slide out of the pouch. Are there any certain foods that trigger leaks? That's another good question. Thanks, guys. So these different foods can trigger some leaks, especially if they have a lot of fiber in them. So foods that might have fiber, broccoli, vegetables, vegetables with skins, fruits with skins, things that don't really break down very easily. So they're foods that are recommended for a normal diet to help add fiber and bulk to the diet. And that helps the digestive system work really well in an unaltered anatomy. But with our anatomies, we have a smaller exit, let's say. Our stomas don't mimic our rectums in terms of the ability to expand and contract. So if that is the case, you have vegetables coming out that aren't very well broken down, and those can kind of back up and create the bulk that they're supposed to do for other people. But for us, it becomes a problem because it puts too much pressure on the barrier itself, and can cause the barrier to kind of pull away again from the skin because of the pressure exerted on it by your fibrous output. How do you deal with noisy pouches? That's a really, really good question. Some pouches are less noisy than others. If you have the option, you could try and get an opaque pouch, and an opaque pouch like this one comes with a cover that's sort of a textile material like you might experience with your clothing. I found that if you get opaque pouches, here's another example, they tend to rustle a little less. I think the material helps absorb the sound versus, this is very noisy. So a couple of options for noisy pouches. You can wear an ostomy bag. The bag covers the ostomy, the pouch itself. It's like a little cover that you can fit around the bag, and they would come with openings or closed pouches. If you have a closed pouch, they can help muffle the sound. Another thing you can do is you can use an ostomy stealth belt. These are available, I would say, they're commercial products, so they're available like on Etsy. You could search for pouches, pouch covers, or ostomy wraps, and wearing those under your clothes will help mitigate those noisy pouches. If you're talking about gas sounds, I think it's the same, actually, the same case in terms of, one, eating fewer gas causing foods, and two, using, a cloth to absorb sound to help it be less noisy. Okay, I know that you can't see me, some of you can't see me on screen. It has to do with how you have your Zoom set up. If you have a full screen, if your Zoom is showing you a full screen with just the slide showing, what you can do is hit your escape button, and that will make the slide presentation smaller, and you may be able to see the picture of me on screen. All right, any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. Again, I apologize for the technical issues. I'm not sure, I've been using the same equipment, so I'm not sure what went wrong, but I do apologize. If you would not mind, we would like you to do a quick poll for us. It's 2 questions, 3 questions maybe. You can do it on your screen. It should be popping up soon. And Marie has just popped it up. And we very much value your feedback, especially me, as I'm, this is only our 5th webinar, so we're still learning and growing and making it better. So any feedback you have to offer, please don't hesitate to give to me. And then if today you have a question later on after the ostomy webinar is over, or you have some questions about products or coaches, these are the ways that you can reach us. This is our phone number on the screen. Send an email to support@joinbetter.com and ask your question, and we'll make sure that your question gets routed to the right people and you get a response.
If you guys could please fill out the poll, it would be really helpful to us going forward. It'll only take about 10 seconds.
Yes, the presentation will be emailed to you, and as well as a little booklet that summarizes everything that I said in the presentation, written out in a more readable format. Thank you, Jerry, for that question.
We'll give you a couple more seconds to finish up the poll and we'll wrap up. And as Siobhan mentioned, there will be a follow-up email that we'll send out after this. That'll contain the slides. It'll have a recording of this presentation, as well as a little takeaway ebook that we've put together for you all. We have a question about doing one on diet. We will be doing one on diet again soon. You can view our webinar schedule on the webinar landing page, which we can share right now.
Will we be, oh, I see a question. Will we be doing one on diet? Yes, we have a webinar on ostomy diets, and we will be representing that in a couple of weeks. But if you are really interested, Ellen, we can get you a copy of the slides if you like. Just send us an email to support@joinbetter.com.
Our next Ostomy and Diet webinar will be on Thursday, April 15th. So you can tune into that. It's the same time. You can register for that on our webinars page. As I mentioned, we'll send out the webinars link along with everything else we mentioned in the follow-up email. Thank you all so much. Okay, I think we're all good. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Have a good day.